I'd like to talk about trauma and the brain and how post-traumatic stress is initiated by what happens in our brain. We're going to focus on many systems are affected, but I want to focus primarily on the limbic system. Our brain is the three parts of our brain primarily are one, the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of our brain, the part of our brain that distinguishes us for the most part from the animal kingdom, that we can become conscious, which is aware of ourselves. That's the first part, the prefrontal cortex. The second part is the limbic system, which is primarily concerned with emotion, many tasks of memory, detecting threat in the world, which translates to emotion as well. That's the second part. The third part of our brain, the more primitive part, the part we do share with most of the animal kingdom, is the hindbrain, the automatic functions, survival functions, breathing, heartbeat, sweating, elimination, coughing, sneezing. These are reflexive actions that we share with much of the animal kingdom that help us survive in this world. So when trauma happens, all parts are affected, but I'm going to concentrate primarily on the limbic system. And in the limbic system, there's two little units, two organisms in the limbic system are called the amygdala. There are two of them. Amygdala, Greek for almond, because they're almond-shaped. And what that part of our brain does, it's essential to survival, is it detects threat, detects danger out in the world. Therefore, once we've been traumatized, the amygdala becomes hypersensitized. In other words, it experienced the trauma, and now those neurons, those cells in the amygdala, become hypersensitive to further trauma. Again, our psyche does not want to be surprised again, shocked again, caught off guard again, so we stay in tune. It's hyper-sensitized. And therefore, anything that happens in the environment, the amygdala is igniting. It's, our brains, primarily the neurons in our brain cells, react on an electrical level and a chemical level. Therefore, they start, quote, firing, which is the electrical and chemical combination being activated. It's called firing. And they fire excessively. So therefore, the amygdala gets oversensitized to trauma. There's one other part I want to mention as well here, and that's working in conjunction with the amygdala is the hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus is very interesting the way our brains were designed. The hippocampus, at the same time the amygdala sends signals which eventually go to the adrenal glands to initiate adrenaline and the fight or flight response. The hippocampus sends signals that inhibit the secretion of adrenaline. In other words, we have two opposing systems working. The amygdala initiates and fires to send those signals for adrenaline to be released in our system, while the hippocampus inhibits that, which is good to have that check and balance. Once we've been traumatized, and there's been brain research that shows the phenomenon of hippocampal shrinking. That hippocampus, in other words, the cells, it starts to lose some cells, it is not as effective as inhibiting. Therefore, that amygdala, which sends the signals, might run rampant. Very little inhibition taking place once we've been traumatized, and so it initiates the flow of more adrenaline in our system, which increases our heart rate, leads to more anxiety, and that hyper state that I mentioned before. And that's the primary way that the brain is affected by trauma.